Hello, welcome to episode 6 of the Brad Davidson Show. In this episode, I'm going to do a dive into the Metabolic Reset. This was a book I wrote with HarperCollins back in 2016, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it since I referenced it, so I wanted to give you an idea of where it came from and what it's all about. You see, over the years, I've learned one thing about this industry, and it is that not everything scientifically based positively impacts people. A lot of times, a lot of the strategies people have been given backfire. And in 2016, when I decided to write my book with HarperCollins, they challenged me with this idea that they wanted to do a book with me, but the marketplace was changing. You see, originally I showed them my program was a 90-day program. And at that point, that's great. No one will buy a book this 90 days, so it needs to be 30 days or less. So I redesigned everything and came up with my idea of what I thought would work. And they said, this is great, but unfortunately, the market has now shifted. It needs to be 21 days or less. And I thought to myself, and I told them, I'm like, that's not possible. And they said, well, if you want to write a book with us, this is what it needs to be. This is where the marketplace is. Otherwise, we can't really work with you. So I wanted to have that happen. So I went to the drawing boards and started looking back over the years. Who gets the best results in my world? And year after year is always the professional athlete. These men and women had a very different perspective on things. It wasn't about how their body looked. It was about how their body performed. And so the first month after season with all these athletes, we would start with the same thing. I put them on a nutrition program that would reduce inflammation. They would take a lot of rest. And the focus was really all on rest, recovery, and regeneration, recovering from the damage that had been done to them the prior season. And they'd always get incredible results. So I took this idea, I put it in a 21-day plan, and I tested it with one of my good friends, Tom Ferry, with 350 of his clients that were real estate agents. And it worked really well. So I took it to HarperCollins, they loved it, and boom, the Metabolic Reset was created. The funny part was, at that moment in time, I had no idea why it worked so well. The average weight loss then, and still to this day, after 45,000 copies have been sold, the book's been out for about 8 years now, the average weight loss for 3 weeks has been 12 pounds, combining men and women. And here's the key component of that. I ask people not to work out during the reset. The most I ask them to do is to walk. So here's this plan that asks, don't work out. Focus on rest. Eat a certain way. And it's not a deprive yourself of massive amounts of calories way. And it was working better than those people going to the gym, working out really hard, and eating less calories. It's not supposed to work that way. I ask you to rest more and eat more, exercise less, eat more, and the results were staggering. See, when you look back over the years of my life of working with people, I've seen some crazy things. That's why I respect science a lot. I follow some people that are really good with science. Guys like Lane Norton, he's great, incredible with nutritional science. Uberman Labs, you ever listen to that podcast? It's great with science. So I highly respect science, and I'm always looking at science. But I had a mentor, probably a decade ago, Charles Pollock, would tell me, there's science to this, and there's an art to this. And so often the art is way ahead of the science. To give you an example of this, I remember sitting in on a nutritional seminar, and this group came in, and they're speaking on the 3 most proven best supplements for athletes. And they came out and they said it was creatine, fish oil, and whey protein. And they now have the science to back all this. And I remember a gentleman standing up that I have a lot of respect for out of Australia says, hey, I know who you are. 20 years ago, you were making fun of us because we were recommending creatine, fish oil, and whey protein, and you're making fun of us because we had no science to back it, so we were irrelevant and invalid. Now, 20 years later, you have the science to back it, so I ask you, who's right? Us 20 years ago or you now? So there's the art and there's the science. And some of the things I've seen science fail is one big one is simply this. Your extreme calorie deficit may be making you fat. I remember years ago, I had a young lady come into my office and she was upset and panicked because she put on 25 pounds over the last couple of months. And she was working with this trainer. He was having to work out 2 to 3 days, or 2 to 3 times a week, 7 days a week for an hour each time, and eating 600 calories a day. He told her, I don't care what your calories are, it just has to be 600 calories. And she put on 25 pounds. His advice to her was, we got to cut your calories to 400 calories. I remember asking her, are you going to do that? No, that's why I'm here. What do I do? Everyone thinks if you just slash your calories and work out really hard, you're gonna get great weight loss because science says you should. Calories in versus calories out. It doesn't always work that way. For this client of mine, it did not work that way. What did we do to help her out? Is we had her start eating more food and exercise a lot less. Balance things out. She got to a better place. So what I'm going to share with you on the reset may go against a lot of what you believe science says we should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And it's okay. If you want to argue with me, that's fine. I don't really care, to be honest with you, because I have seen it work so well in so many situations where people are doing the things they're supposed to do, and it's backfiring on them. Now, yes, people have done that. They've slashed their calories, done extreme exercise, and lost a lot of weight. But then what's also not being talked about is what's called the rebound effect. The more stress you put on the metabolism to change the metabolism looks, when you're done, and let's face it, most diets, not most, all diets eventually come to an end, there's a rebound effect. The more stress you've applied, usually the bigger rebound there is. Biggest Loser is a great example of this. Extreme stress to force a lot of weight off, and then when it stops, it comes barreling back on. So my reset is focused on something completely different. And do I have a lot of science to back it? I have some, but I have a lot of experience to see, wow, it works really well, and it puts people in a place to maintain it and progress even more over time. I'm a big believer, and you should be doing this stuff for the rest of your life, not the next 90 days. Gosh, to validate the whole rebound effect, everyone's selling these 90-day transformations, the before and after picture. I always tell people, before you commit, ask to see the after picture. What does this person look like now? Very often, it's not very pretty. So if you're in that state, you're thinking about creating or going into a program, and you're seeing all these before and after pictures, and they're showing you, here's the results you'll get, always remember, can I see the person now, or can I see the after picture? What does that person look like 6 months later? And that will tell you, in all honesty, if it's a good program or just an extreme program. What I've learned is extremes don't work. I like this to be about the rest of your life, not about the next 90 days. Even the fact that it's a 3-week metabolic reset, that was dictated by the industry, not by me. It needed to be 21 days or less, so I just put it at 21 days, and it worked. But it is not the end-all, be-all. It is simply a situation I use once a year with my clients, just like I do with my professional athletes. Help the metabolism recover. Help heal any damage that has happened. Rest, recover, regenerate. You can't reset the metabolism. Now, somebody hammered me on that one. I get it. It is a term used to just give the metabolism a break. Let it catch up on what it's behind on. Let it get back to a good place so it's happy versus unhappy. So many of you are simply just battling and trying to force an unhappy metabolism to change versus just loving on it a little bit. Once you love on it a little bit, let it catch up on what it's behind on, it'll work a whole lot better for you. Here's another interesting thing when it comes to this whole calories in versus calories out thing. There was a study done, I heard this from Lane Norton, I think it was 2018. They looked at all the wearables that are showing us how many calories you burn during activity. And all the wearables, what did they do? They showed us they overestimated by 28 to 93% caloric burn. Now, all of them are in different stages. I haven't seen the exact research to see which ones are how far off, but they looked at a huge meta-analysis of all the wearables and found they're all overestimating your caloric burn. So you think you're burning X calories and eating X calories and you should be in a deficit, where in reality you're not really burning that much. A lot of times there's another situation where calories in versus calories out, you think it's all going right and it's not. So I want to look at this. First off, what are some signs and symptoms you could be having that could tell you, hey, doing a metabolic reset, the system I've set up could be really good for you? A couple of big ones: fatigue. If you're just tired all the time, if you are having to pounce caffeine all day long to get through your days, that's a sign your metabolism just needs a break, needs to catch up on your rest. Other signs: if you're a woman in menopause, you're having all the hot flashes and all those things, right? You're not sleeping well. That's another great population and a great period of time to jump on the reset. I can tell you how many people have done the reset and they've gotten dramatic reduction in things like hot flashes. Irritability goes away. Anxiety goes away. It helps a lot in that situation. Another thing, if you're working out really hard, you're eating clean, and nothing's happening. That's another sign that says, hey, maybe just back off. Take a break. Give your metabolism a break. Let's catch up on some of the things that could be causing some issues. I call them roadblocks. What I found is 4 roadblocks people deal with when under a lot of stress. If you're under a lot of stress, you have a high stress lifestyle, stress at work, stress at home, all kinds of things can be bogging you down with stress. There's 4 pathways I see be impacted by this. The first one, blood sugar stability. We hear a lot about blood sugar. And the answer is don't eat carbs. If you're under a lot of stress, you're going to see here in a little bit, I disagree with that. I think carbs can be used to your benefit, and I learned it from Rob Wolf, who wrote the Paleo Diet. If you're under stress and you cut carbs out of your diet, it's not going to work very well for you. It's going to be an ugly ending. The second pathway, stress pathways. If you're under a lot of stress and you're just hot on stress, you're either cranking out way too much cortisol hormones or your body's starting to deplete. You may be feeling stressed and wired, or if it's been going on for a long time, you can feel stressed and tired. Those are another pathway that really gets negatively impacted by too much stress. The liver. The liver gets highly bombarded by too much stress. If you're under a lot of stress and you're exercising a ton, you have all that byproduct, the lactic acid, and things like that your liver has to deal with, it can become unhappy. Remember, the liver is responsible for 600 metabolic activities a day. If it is not working well, if it's sluggish and congested, your metabolism is not going to respond well. I hear this all the time too. Well, I don't really drink much alcohol, so my liver's fine. My ALT, AST enzymes are fine. Just because you don't drink doesn't mean your liver is not congested and bombarded and not working well. I see it all the time. You can even read the studies. There are now a shocking number of kids dealing with fatty liver disease that have never even drank a sip of alcohol in their life. So there's other things bombarding our liver. What I've learned is by the time your liver enzymes show elevated on ALT and AST, it's really congested. So just because it's not showing signs in your labs yet doesn't mean that it's not being impacted. And then last but not least, digestion is impacted by too much stress as well. So you could be having digestive issues. A lot of things called like food sensitivities. This is one thing I write a lot about in the book. There's not foods we're so-called allergic to, but they're foods when we consume them, they trigger an inflammatory response in the body and elevate the stress hormones, and they're raising havoc. And the problem with these foods, it can be 30 minutes to 72 hours later that they trigger. A classic example for me, I grew up on a dairy farm in Oregon, and I grew up with really bad asthma. I thought milk was the greatest thing for human beings. I drank a lot of it, and I did it all the way through my life. In my 30s, my health fell apart. I started doing anything and everything I could to figure out what was wrong with me. Had my first food sensitivity test done. Guess what I was highly sensitive to? Cow's milk. I stopped drinking cow's milk. Guess what calmed down dramatically? You got it, my asthma. So sensitivity is causing all kinds of havoc in the body. So let's look at the reset. The reset is focused on aiding those 4 areas of the metabolism. We're asking you to take a break from things that are bombarding the metabolism. We're asking you to back off on hard exercise. If your metabolism is not working when you're aggressively training, it's going to have a hard time recovering from it. I ask you to cut out alcohol for the reset. If your liver is congested and not working well, and you keep feeding it alcohol, it keeps having to shut down what it's doing to deal with the alcohol. We want to give it a break from that so we can catch up on what it's behind on. I also really like to reduce the amount of caffeine being consumed in things like coffee, but to cut that way back as well. So when you look at the metabolic reset, here's a couple things. Again, the average person has lost about 12 pounds on this in 3 weeks following the reset, okay? So it has a really positive impact on the metabolism. And my favorite part is within the first 7 to 10 days, you'll notice a drastic increase in energy and brain clarity. Some people, the weight loss starts early, others it starts later, but there will be some weight loss. Again, the average weight loss is about 12 pounds. And when I first created it, it was never about weight loss. It was always about cleaning the metabolism up, getting it to a healthier state. So when you go back to doing your aggressive training and your nutrition, trying to change how the body looks, it will work better. Just clearing those roadblocks. So we always start off with simply this. Have a little bit of lemon water first thing in the morning. Okay, when I wrote my book with HarperCollins, a couple of things. They didn't want people to have to do lab testing, and they didn't want the people to buy supplements. So everything I'm going to ask you to do are more things you can do with just food. So I like to start the day off on the reset protocol, just squeeze half a lemon in some warm water first thing in the morning. It'll help the liver to detoxification. It'll wake up digestion. It helps in the hydration. I personally even like to put a packet of LMNT in that first morning water, so a lot of minerals are coming in as well to help with hydration. We want to make sure also, on top of this, you're drinking half your body in ounces of water a day. So if you're 200 pounds, it's 100 ounces. Just take your weight, divide it by 2. Make sure you're consuming that much water every day to make sure you're hydrated. It helps with things like detoxification. helps with energy production, helps clean out the toxins while you're sleeping at night. So make sure that you are hydrated the whole time. Next, I like to do what's called a reset smoothie. And this is just a simple reset smoothie that is low calorie, high nutrient to support the liver, support and stabilize blood sugar, and to support digestion. And if you buy my book, you'll see I have a number of recipes on exactly how to do this. But the smoothies are specifically built to help the metabolism, not hinder the metabolism. It's a low calorie. Okay, it's low calorie, high nutrient. It's just to provide a lot of nutrients. Now, one thing I notice is when we go into a recovery state, it is an eat less, exercise less strategy so the metabolism can go heal itself. I always tell people, when you get super sick, what happens? You want to rest and you don't want to eat. The body needs to use its energy to heal itself. So same thing here, we're trying to clean it up. So just reduce consumption so your body doesn't spend so much time digesting food, and reduce exercise so it's not wasting energy trying to recover from exercise. It can take care of catching up on things it's behind on. Then I like to use what's called cranberry water. It's 4 ounces of cranberry juice and 20 ounces of water. This just naturally helps clean up the lymph system, helps get the garbage out. Drink that between your smoothie and lunch. And then we get to lunch. We're now basically needing a bigger meal because we basically skipped breakfast. I'm not the biggest fan of intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, it works well for some people, it completely destroys other people. So it's not a place I like to start many people with. If people want to try it, I'll eventually get them there and we'll test it out and see if it works or not. But it upregulates stress. Yes, it does get people to eat less food, but I'm working with more high-performing people that are working out hard. We need to eat more food to match that, to keep the metabolism in a great place. Because remember, extreme caloric deficits with too much exercise, it's too much stress in the metabolism. It can cause things to backfire. So lunch is always a high protein, high vegetable, and some fats type of meal. There is no carbs. It's more of a paleo meal at lunch. So there's no carbs in this meal. We want to stabilize blood sugar, give the body lots of good nutrients and amino acids and vegetables and all the phytonutrients from vegetables to help it. But we want to keep carbs out. If you need a snack between lunch and dinner, I like to have fruit. And there's fruit in the smoothie as well. I'm not afraid of fruit. People are like, oh, fruit's bad for you. I disagree with that. Fruit is fructose. The liver needs that fructose. It has a ton of minerals and nutrients in it. The body needs those minerals and nutrients. So I like to use fruit as standalone snacks periodically throughout the day. So I like people to have some fruit between lunch and dinner, especially if your energy dips between lunch and dinner or you start to get hungry. A lot of times it's just the liver needing fructose. So I like fruit if you need a snack between lunch and dinner. And now we get to dinner, and this is where my system dramatically differs from most systems. Remember, stress is a problem. So we need to strategically battle stress. How do we bring stress down? Well, we all know if you drink alcohol, it brings stress down very quickly, but there's a negative side effect to that, especially with sleep. It'll induce sleep and then disrupt second half night of sleep. I talked more about that in the last podcast on sleep. So what we want at dinner is we want a good amount of protein, a good amount of vegetables, and carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. Now, I do understand that gluten is a common sensitivity. So I would suggest for the first phase of this reset, just go no gluten. Just eat any type of rice, any type of potatoes as your carbohydrates, and you'll be safe. You can also use things like gluten-free pastas if you want. What I tell people is just go gluten-free for the reset and then reintroduce it. You'll know real quick within 3 days if it's a problem for you or not. What I did when I wrote this book, instead of having people do blood tests, I took all the blood tests I had done over the last few years prior to it and just found the most common ones. Gluten was a big one. Dairy was a big one. So pull those out. If you want to see what the other ones are, you can look more into my book. And then before bed, I like to use some strategies. I got real specific in the last podcast I did on my favorite cocktail, especially if you're a menopausal woman, on my favorite pre-bed cocktail to help us sleep. The one thing I like to use during the reset with most people is I like to use full-fat Greek yogurt, a little bit of cinnamon powder, and some fruit. I have found that to really help with sleep. You can also just do a little bit of tart cherry juice. I talked about that in the prior podcast as well as a simple pre-bed snack. Here's the thing. Most people think they have sleep problems. So what we found with the reset is if you cut down on caffeine dramatically, most people begin to sleep much better. I think too much caffeine throughout the day is the leading reason why people struggle with sleep. When you drink caffeine, it tells your brain you're not tired. Even if you're totally tired, It blocks that messaging, so it makes you not be able to fall asleep very well. So often we cut caffeine back, people's sleep begins to dramatically improve. But that little snack I gave you before bed during the reset can really help, because so often people want to cheat between dinner and bedtime. They want to go after those comfort foods, the high sugar, high fat, high carb foods. It's the brain trying to calm down. So use something as simple as the full-fat Greek yogurt, some cinnamon powder, and some fruit. We're going to help the brain calm down very quickly, and you'll sleep better. And the main focus here should be on sleep. You heard me in the last podcast. I'll reiterate it over and over and over. The one thing we know for sure through science that people need is 7 hours or more a night of sleep. There's a very small population of people who can handle less than that. But it's so small, you're more likely to be struck by lightning than to have that genetic makeup to be able to do well with that. So we want to do anything and everything we can to drive better sleep. So we're reducing caffeine, use that pre-bed snack, calm the brain down. We got alcohol out of the picture. So what'll happen is you should start sleeping better rather quickly on the reset. And when it comes to exercise, I like people to completely back off. When I do my reset, I do it once a year. I just walk every day for that 3-week period. That's all the exercise I do. Some people just have to exercise. And I find this really funny. When you ask a professional athlete to take a month off of working out hard, they have no problem doing it. They have no problem just focusing on rest, recovery, getting therapy, getting their bodies back in a place where they can train hard again. But so often I ask general pop people, hey, just cut back on your exercise. Oh, I can't do that. I'll put weight on. To me, that's a problem. If you can't take a couple of days off of working out without putting weight on, that's another sign your metabolism's pissed and not doing well. You should be able to take a break from exercise and actually not have a problem. Not lose muscle mass, not lose strength. You may lose some strength in squatting if you take a couple weeks off of squatting, but that will come back rather quickly. But everything I've learned, especially from a gentleman named Stefan Kazult out of Kilo Strength Society, he's one of my best mentors in regards to the fitness side of things. He shows you can take 3 weeks off of most lifts and come back to them 3 weeks later and your strength's still gonna be there. He is very clear that if you take more than a week of squatting off, that's gonna start to dip. So don't be afraid of taking some time away from the gym and expect something bad to happen. My pro athletes do it every season. They take a break, they rest, they relax, they get away from training, and they come back ready to roll, and every year they get stronger, leaner, faster, the things they need. It's easy to maintain those and continue to progress those when there's an off season and a rest period for them. So just look at it as it's your yearly off season. It's that period of time where you're focused on healing the metabolism versus hurting the metabolism. It's pretty simple. I also like in that period of time, get massages, do some hot, cold contrast therapies, things that will help you with recovery. Take some naps. Think of it as a regeneration phase. You're resetting everything. You're bringing it all back online so it's on your side versus your body constantly fighting itself. You'll never win when you're trying to force your metabolism to change. When you are trying to beat it because you think your metabolism is pissed at you, it's never the case. What I've actually found so often is your metabolism is loving you and protecting you from you is often the case when you don't like how it looks or feels. It's doing things to protect itself from the damage you're creating. You start loving on it, it's gonna change how things work is what I've found through my years of experience. Is there a lot of research to validate a lot of things I'm sharing with you? No, there's not. But again, remember the art versus the science. I have seen from experience that this really works. I have a lot of doctors on my side with this thing. I have some that hate it and want to fight it, and other ones that agree with it and have seen it work really well. And so I get to work a lot with people in that realm as well. So hate it, like it, I don't really care. I've seen it work really well. That's why I want to share it with you. And I found with my high-performing people under a lot of stress, once or twice a year we do this reset. And it keeps people on par. It keeps them in a high-performing state, keeps them very energetic, keeps them training hard throughout the year, keeps them dominating at work, keeps them very present and focused on people they love. That's what I care about most, and it keeps them looking good. Because we're loving on the metabolism versus fighting the metabolism. There's two things I want to talk with you about too that are really big on the internet right now. First off is the 30-30-30. Dr. Gary Braca has really brought this to light. A lot of people are watching it. It was out years ago. Tim Ferriss wrote about it in one of his books. And I think it's interesting. And again, it's one of those things where for some people, I've played with it. For some people, it dominates, works really well. For others, it does nothing. But I like it. I mean, I think if it's something you want to try, you should do it. It's focused on one of those pathways of the blood sugar stability. Get that protein in. Amino acids are really, really important for the body. Stabilize that blood sugar. Get some activity in. That will make you more insulin sensitive as well. So I'm a big fan of it. But again, it's like everything. Outside of that one component I've seen of sleep, we all need 7 or more hours to sleep a night. With the 30-30-30, for some people, it dominates. It's awesome. For other people, they don't notice a difference. And the other thing that's really famous out there right now is this 86-hour water fast. Dana White has really made this a big deal. And I think fasting is a really powerful tool. I've done a lot of research on detoxification and things like that. I spent 6 months really studying it. And my takeaway once I was done was that, okay, this stuff's really effective. There's a gentleman out of Houston, a doctor, Bob Rakowski. When people come to see him and they're really sick, the first thing he does is starts them with an aggressive detox fast. And it works really, really well. And he says, most people can only handle aggressive fasting and detoxification periods when they're really sick and there's a lot of motive behind it. And so he uses it very aggressively. And I've seen it do absolutely amazing things through his work. But what I decided after I went through all my research on it is I love this stuff, but I will only do extreme fasts and extreme detoxification protocols when a doctor is monitoring me and managing me. I will never prescribe it to one of my clients. I'm not a doctor. There's too many pathways that can go wrong. So if someone wants to do it, I'm hugely for it. I just make sure a doctor's watching them. And with the 86-hour water fast, you're seeing so much of the benefit of fasting. The autophagy, the cells regenerating themselves, insulin sensitivity kicking in, a lot of good things are happening with it. So I'm a big fan of fasting, and you're seeing the benefits of it by what you're seeing in that 86-hour water fast. Are you going to lose a little bit of muscle tissue on it? Maybe. But it'll regenerate and come back. I think the health benefits that come from those type of fasting protocols are incredible. Again, I like to periodically do them, but I use a doctor when I do them to monitor me because I've just seen so many things can go sideways, and I'd rather a doctor be monitoring it and being on call versus someone like me. I am not qualified to help people get through that, okay? So a couple things that are really big on the internet right now I think are really cool. I think they have benefit, but I also think they're things you should watch for. I've seen them do wonderful things for people, and I've seen them destroy people. Not destroy people, but not work for people. So try them out. That's always my best suggestion to my clients. If there's something that really intrigues you and you want to try it out, let's make sure you apply it correctly and see what happens. I've seen keto diet work for people. I've seen it not work for people. I've seen carb cycling work for people. I've seen it not work for people. We're all individual. The only way you can really find what works best for you is to test things and then adapt things. And what I've learned is there is no one right answer for everyone, okay? What works really well for one person is going to destroy another person. I can't do the keto diet to save my life. I also can't do the vegan or vegetarian diet. I don't feel well on either of them. I don't do well on either of them. I'm a type of metabolism that I need carbohydrates every day to function my best. So I can't go to the extremes. I got to be a little more in the middle. In my opinion, it's your job to figure that out. Find what works best for you. Because there is no one right answer for everyone. That part I'm super clear on. There is no one right answer, and there's no research out there on nutrition or fitness that says, here's the answer for everyone. It doesn't exist. There's lots of research out there showing here for most people this works really well. And a lot of times you'll see in these studies, more research needs to be done on these topics to see for sure. So find what works best for you, okay? So there you have it. There's a little insight into my metabolic reset, okay? If you want more details on it, you can buy the book. It's on Amazon. Every major publisher has it. Every major book seller has it. It's been around for 8 years. It's done really well. But it'll give you a deep dive into all these topics that we just discussed. And I wrote it in a friendly way. I'm not a big fan of the big words. Look how smart I am. I'm not smart enough to retain all that stuff. What I've learned I'm good at is reading that stuff and then breaking it down and presenting it in a way that makes sense to people that don't have that background. So I wrote the book in that way. And I'm hoping the podcast is coming across in that way as well. Here's things I've worked. I've tried to present them in a way that's understandable. Yes, I'm never going to blow a doctor's mind because they're way more intelligent in that stuff than I am. But I found my skill set is to be able to take that stuff, break it down, and make it understandable. So that's what I'm hoping to give you. So if you're tired, lethargic, you're working out hard, you're not getting the results you deserve, you just don't feel right, I'm going to tell you, try out the reset. It might surprise you.